with I think the audio should be on. Yep, audio's on, and we are streaming. Okay, very good. I'll put on the other mic. So do you guys have any questions about key pair values or list of key pair values? Nope. Not yet. Okay, very good. Hmm? Sorry? Okay.
There will be questions eventually, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's going to be helpful, for what you're going to do.
Yeah, no, I know.
So,
I think my first step that I want to do, though, is actually I wanted to ask you, how are you going to break down the homework assignments? Like, are we just going to turn in a final thing at the end, or are you going to ask for pieces of it throughout?
I think,
start planning it out.
yeah. So I think it's better to break it up into phases. So this way, you can get partial credit for, work that you have been doing over the semester. So, but I'm still kind of hung up on one or two projects, that are kind of still, I need to help those people to revise what they plan to do. Because, one was too complicated because, the person wanted to make an overlay on top of a game. And App Inventor cannot do that. Another person had one that is a little bit too simplistic, to calculate student loan payment. So I would like to kind of extend that one a little bit, just to push it a little bit further. Maybe to keep track of several different student profiles, different amounts, so people can kind of play off different situations and compare easily. So I still have to kind of contact those individuals and help them to revise. But yours is fine. Yours is good to go.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking in terms of if you're going to break the project up into like assignments, then I'll wait till I know what those are going to be before I break it up on my own. You know what I mean? I don't know. So I don't like build in extra steps where I don't need them or duplicate. Because I think for me, the first step, I need to draw out, like, I'm kind of visual, so I'm probably storyboard it.
Okay.
But I don't know if that would be. But if your homework assignment is going to be something like actually mock it, then I would probably storyboard it differently, so that I can have also along the lines turn in the homework properly.
Right.
If that makes sense. So I'll wait till you break it out and then see what it is, and then do my structure around that.
Okay. That part is entire. I would say, unless you cannot decide how to proceed, I think you can kind of proceed in the way that that works best for your app, because different apps are different. Some apps are more back end heavy and other apps are more front end heavy, so they are obviously different. Because if you have something that's more back end heavy, then your first versions will have like minimal user interface. It's just okay, I need to be able to talk to the server. Am I talking to the server? Am I talking reliably? And so on and so forth. But if your app is front end heavy, then it's going to be a lot of storyboarding. You can just you can use your App Inventor, and just create all your screens, even though there's no logic associated with the buttons or the text boxes. You can just use this as a tool to start canvassing, right? Yeah. Yep. Because eventually that's going to be what you're going to be using. So there is that. All right. Very cool. So over the weekend, I read a news article on how the next. Do you guys remember Nokia, the cell phone maker? They are back. They are back. So the thing is, they're back.
They're bringing the Razr phone back too, not Nokia.
Expensive too.
Really?
Yeah, the new Razr is actually super expensive.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's not like the old Razr where it's bottom of the line. That's the phone.
It was big when that came out.
Yeah.
And it was nice.
Yep, but the new cell phone from Nokia, I think they're gonna introduce sometime in April or so, has got 5 forward-facing cameras. 5. I think of which 3 are black and white only, and then 2 are color capable. But the black and white is for tonal capture. So the camera is supposed to have a extremely good HDR capabilities. HDR stands for high um, dynamic range HDR. So that's what. Okay, have you guys ever taken a picture with the subject being backlit?
Yeah.
Like you're taking a picture of a person in a tunnel, and then the back of the tunnel is lit. So HDR helps because what it does is it will capture the details of the shadow as well as details of the highlight, and it will compress accordingly so that everything kind of still looks good. Um, so with these cameras coming up, or with these cell phones, with like 5 cameras, coming up, they can now capture, all the data that they need without having to take multiple pictures, because that's the old technique. You just take several pictures of the same scene, and then you can stitch them together, and then analyze the tonal range and stuff like that. So these new cameras can just do it with one click. Yep, 5 forward-facing cameras. So that's kind of interesting.
Capitalize on the selfies.
Yeah. Well, but that's the forward-facing camera. The selfie camera is I think 13 megapixel on that one. So it's going to be about $600 phone. Not a cheap phone, but at the same time still not expensive as a or S9, the Galaxy S9. Yeah, those are about $1,000 each. So, all right, well, let's go ahead and get started today. Um, so we are going back to Canvas first. Okay, so let's see which one is my Canvas screen here. That's one of my modules. Okay, there we go. All right, so we are still going through the JSON, format. So we have talked about the encoding. Encoding, basically, if you want to use the built-in encoding, you can do that by coercing a list into a string. It will do its own encoding. But we also found problems with its own encoding. It does not escape special characters. Like if you have double quotes within the string, it does not put a backslash in front of the double quote to escape the double quote. So that can be problematic depending on whether the content that you want to capture includes one of those special characters like backslash itself or double quote and stuff like that. So for encoding, it is better to use my encoder, which is a make JSON. Okay. Decoding is easy because decoding you can just use the web components JSON decoding subroutine. So that part is fairly easy. So now we're moving on to applications of why we want to look into something that seems to be kind of complex and unnecessary. So the first one is kind of important because most of your apps are not going to be single screen. So most of your apps will have multiple screens. For those of you who have been writing programs, okay, it doesn't even matter what programming language, C, C++, Java, COBOL, JavaScript, and so on, they all have one form of global variable or another. Okay, so in C and C++, you can declare a global variable, and it becomes visible from any subroutine and any file in the project. Okay, that's kind of cool. In COBOL, I'm pretty sure you have the concept of global variables as well, so you can declare a variable and it is accessible throughout the entire program. JavaScript, the same way, except when it comes to app programming, it can only go as global as the screen. So if you have an app that has multiple screens, they do not share anything. Okay? So that's the first thing we're going to do today is to kind of let me illustrate to you what I mean by there's no such thing as global variable across screens. So let me go back to projects and make a new project here. Start a new project. And I'm just going to call this project global. because it does all it does is to illustrate how variables are not global across screens. So that means we need to have multiple screens first. By default, you have screen 1. Now, screen 1 is special. There's no way to reorder screen 1 so it becomes screen 2. Screen 1 is going to be the very first screen that gets displayed when your app starts. So from that perspective, screen 1 is very special. So what you want to do with screen 1 most of the time, okay, depending on how fancy you want to make your app, is to make it your splash screen. So it displays an image, it displays a logo, of your app, of your company, what the publisher of the software. It reports, what version it is, and so on. Okay, so it only pops up, stay there for 1 second or so, and then it transitions to the actual screen that you want to get into. Is that okay? So your screen 1, should be reserved, just for splash screen, the welcoming screen. Yep. Yeah. Why? Because if you don't reserve it for the splash screen and later on you want to have a splash screen, you cannot make that happen. Now, if you say, okay, I'm reserving screen 1 as my splash screen, but I decide not to have a splash screen, that's easily fixed. All you have to do is to specify in screen 1 and says, let's transition to screen 2 right away. Then you don't have a splash screen. But if you want to have a splash screen, this is the only place to put it. Yes? Screen 1 is for what we call a splash screen, which is kind of like the first screen that you get into, that kind of, so all the initialization, if your app needs to talk to a server or some kind of initialization that takes time, it's done in the splash screen, so that people do not accidentally click on buttons when they are not actually active yet. So your splash screen typically is used for loading data, checking stuff, making sure that everything is ready to go before you get to the first functional screen. Okay? Sure, absolutely. So for those of you who are not really familiar with the concept of a splash screen, oh, by the way, I fixed a few things. First of all, I fixed the problem of screen copy and uploading, not compatible. It keeps, clobbering each other. So this time it's not going to clobber each other. So let me do a screen copy. And all right, so here's my screen here. I was looking into something earlier, but that's fine. Okay, you guys can all see my cell phone screen here. So I'm just going to show you a splash screen with Pokemon Go. That's your splash screen, okay? And then it transitions into a second screen, which is also functioning more or less like a splash screen, okay? Because, you cannot play the game. There's nothing you can do right here. And what it's doing is authenticating, communicating with the Pokemon Go server, making sure everything is good to go. Then you get to the actual game. Okay, so yes, we got a lot of stuff here, and I got my 50 coins. Excellent, very good. But this is the screen where I can actually interact with the game, but not prior. So are we understanding what a splash screen is and the function why it is useful in some applications? Oh, cool. So I'm getting all these Pokeballs because I walked at least 5 kilometers. It's interesting, how these games, they use all kinds of psychological tricks to kind of keep you in the game. All kinds of feedback.
Are you able to see code
Huh?
that creates that?
No, that's proprietary. So
Okay.
pretty sure Pokemon Go, or the company called Niantic, does not want to share its code.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only reason I question that is because if you create an app
Mm-hmm.
to make sure other people can't see your code, so they must have did something to make sure you.
Well, you can see a part of it, but most of it is actually on the server side. So the interaction, with quote unquote the world in Pokemon Go is all in the cloud. So the app itself is more or less just like a dumb terminal, using the server technology terminology. It's more like a dumb terminal, where the server would say, okay, display this thing over here, that thing over there, that thing over there. So you have limited interaction with the actual algorithm that is actually running on a server and not on your phone.
Because in COBOL, we
Mm-hmm.
had the source code, and then we compiled it, and then
Mm-hmm.
went to object code.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Does this work?
Very similar
Okay.
to apps too. Apps also do it kind of the same way.
Okay.
Even in App Inventor, it's about the same.
Okay.
Okay, so our main objective, with this project is to show, first of all, show you guys how to make multiple screens. Okay, you can see one huge button here, or several screen, related buttons here. The first one allows you to switch from one screen to another, so you can design the screens. You can also, by switching to a different screen, you also get different blocks. So I will show that a little bit later. This is how you add a new screen. Okay, so click on the new screen button, and then it will say, okay, how do you want to name your new screen? Which by default is just screen 2. Okay, but you can change the name of each screen, which basically is the text that gets displayed here. Okay, the third one is remove screen, which is actually grayed out. The first screen is the one screen that you cannot remove. Okay, so that is why it is important to plan ahead of time, because this is the one screen that you cannot get rid of. Now you might think, if I add a second screen, okay, you can see how the default is screen 2, which I'll keep for now. Okay, so now we got two screens, so we can switch from screen 1 to screen 2. Now since both screens do not have anything, it doesn't seem like it's doing anything. But even with two screens, I cannot remove screen 1. Now, if I add like 5 screens to the app, so it has a total of 6 screens, I can delete any one of the other screens. But screen 1 remains to be undeletable. Okay, so it's very important. It's kind of special.
But you can modify screen 1.
You can modify screen 1 just like all the other screens, but if you plan not to use a splash screen initially, and then later on you decide, oh, you know what, I really want a splash screen, then it becomes very difficult to change it, because screen 1 cannot be moved. It is always the screen that gets displayed when you start your app. So that becomes an issue. So if you want to have a splash screen, always reserve your screen 1 for just that purpose. Okay, start with your other screens to do the actual stuff. So what we'll do now, okay, I'm just going to do something not exactly productive, but it is important. So I'm going to move a label into screen 1, just so that it's easier for us to differentiate which one is which one. Now, when you look at the properties of screen 1, it also has something that other screens do not have. So let's go ahead and look at screen 1 again. Most of this stuff, about screen, accent color is actually available to all the screens. App name is only specific to screen 1. So only screen 1 has app name in it. There's more. Okay, if I scroll down the list. Okay, see this part here that says about version code and version name. That is also only specific to screen 1. None of the other screens have these. Now, version code and version name is up to you to decide. So when you have a new major revision of your program where the functions have changed, you added features and stuff like that, you should change the function, the version code, and the version name. What is the difference? What do you think?
If you have a problem, you could go back to your old version.
It's for people to identify which version they're running.
Okay.
So version code has to be an integer, cannot have a notation like this. So version code has to be an integer starting with 1. So every time you release something that is new, you should change that number and up it by at least 1. Okay? So it'll just be version code 1, version code 2, and so on. Yes?
Isn't if you save it as I forget what it was called.
APK?
No, checkpoint.
Mm-hmm.
automatically increment that for you?
I do not think so.
That'd be smart.
It doesn't have any meaning until you release your code. So when you're internally developing, where checkpoints are important, that's kind of like intermediate between what other people can see. So the version code does not need to be changed. So it is only significant when it is released to the wild. When you have your app uploaded to the Play Store, then you have to make sure that version code is unique between versions, so that people can say, okay, since I upgraded to version code 16, okay, this function does not work anymore, and you can identify which one it is. Now, how is that different from version name? Version name does not even have to be a number. Okay, so you can go to version name and type in RC2. Okay, RC stands for release candidate. Okay, so a lot of times, before something is actually released, out of beta, they will have RC1, release candidate 1, RC2, RC3, until the developer feels confident enough to say, okay, now it is an actual release. But version name is what people see, okay? Version code is just an integer, it just keeps incrementing. But you have to do that, okay? So it's kind of important, when you are ready to release the software, but for now, it is not as important. So right now, we just go like, okay, I'll tell you what it is, but we won't be paying attention to it until much later. All right, so now let's go to screen 2. So I'm switching to screen 2, and you can see how screen 2 is now blank, right? Because I didn't do anything with screen 2. So every screen has its very unique display, okay, things that are in it, and it also has its unique blocks, okay? So the code that goes with a screen is unique, within a screen, okay? It is not shared. All right, so now that we have selected screen 2, let's go through properties again and see what the differences are. The first thing is you do not see the app name anymore. App name is not a part of it. And then the second one is version code and version name are not here either. So screen 1 is special because only screen 1 contains those properties. Screen 2 does not have those. Are we good so far? Yes? Okay. All right. So let's switch back to screen 1. Okay, we'll do something in screen 2 just to identify this is in fact screen 2. So I'm just going to put in a label. That's you can see that screen 2 is spelled out here, but I'm going to put a label here to also make sure that we know this is screen 2. Okay, something in screen 2. There we go. So this is our screen 2, and every time you want to switch back and do something with screen 1, click on this button and go back to screen 1, and I'm going to change that label too, and I'll put in the button, because what if I want to switch to screen 2? Well, maybe the button will do it. So I can now change the text of the button and say switch to screen 2. There we go. So now the two screens are different, and I will change the text of label 1. So it says here label in screen 1. So I'm just trying to make it visually different between the two screens. So now they're quite different, significantly different. Okay. So let's go ahead and run the app, okay, and find out what it looks like, and whether something happens when I click the button. Okay. So let's see. Still got my emulator on. That's good. Now, if you have a multi-screen program, my recommendation is to use this method to test your program. Because if you don't do this, then your emulator or whatever phone you're using to debug your application will synchronize with whatever screen that you have selected here. So if you choose to go to screen 4, okay, your app running on the phone will automatically switch to screen 4 without doing the initializing, bypassing a whole bunch of mechanisms. So you can't really debug a program easily when you use the connect, any one of the connect methods. If you have a multi-screen application, the only real way to debug your program is to use one of the two build methods. Now, because I have my phone, that has a QR code, scanner, I could just use the QR code as well. Well, let's give that a try. Okay. And I have to get my QR code scanner ready. And it's right here under tools. Yeah, so now it displays a QR code. My phone has scanned it, and I'll show you what it looks like on my phone too. So the QR code is basically just a bitmap that contains, information that in this case eventually becomes a URL. So, if I click on the URL and say open, then it should bring me to that resource, and it's asking me whether I want to download the APK, and I click download. The APK is now downloaded, and I need to find out where it put it. It doesn't automatically prompt me to open it. Maybe I have turned off that setting. Ooh, look, the rain is coming. Yeah. This is a radar, Doppler radar from KCRA. But I don't know where it put it in terms of the download folder. Okay, let me see if I can find it. File manager. And then go to downloads. It should be here. What's the name again? The name of the app. I think it's just global, yeah. And it's not here. I have no idea where to put it. Okay.
Is there a way to see the date when something's downloaded?
Yeah, you can see the date. Okay, this method doesn't work well. All right. So the other method is to use it this way, which basically means you have to run a few more command line stuff. Okay, it's still compiling. This is the one that I have been using in previous classes already, so it's not exactly new. So this one requires you to download the file to the PC first. So I'm going to save it onto the PC into my temp folder. Now, where you want to put it is up to you guys, okay? And then you use adb install -r. The -r basically means if it's already installed, reinstall it, okay? So without the -r, sometimes you run into a problem because the app is already installed. Without that -r, it will refuse to reinstall it, okay? So now we have to specify the path to the file, which is global.apk in the temp folder. So all of these are the commands that I need to run. And because I made some modifications, so it's not conflicting with the screen part anymore. So now it says success. So if I switch back to my Android device, I should be able to find global as an app now. So let's see, global is GL, right here. So here's the app. Okay, this is screen one. As I said, when the application starts, it has no option but to start with screen one. Okay, and I'm clicking switch to screen two, and nothing happens because I haven't really specified any action associated with the button itself. So the button seems to be functional. I mean, I can click it and it seems to be clicked, but it doesn't do a single thing because I haven't specified anything and specify what it should be doing when it's clicked. Okay, so oops, oh, that's kind of cool. It switches orientation. So now we get back to App Inventor and we go to blocks. Now remember, this is blocks for screen one. How do we know that? Because we can see it here. You can change the name of screen one to anything, but you cannot make it not behaving like screen one. It is always going to behave specially compared to the other screens. So in here, what should I do? I mean, I'm just gonna check whether you guys know the concepts or not. I want to do something when a button is clicked. Yes.
You click on the button one,
Yep.
and then grab the when button one dot click.
Yep. There you go. Very good. Okay. So this is object-oriented programming, which basically means, whenever you want to do something, you first think about who is doing that, what object is doing it. Okay? So in this case, we are trying to do something when button one is clicked. So the object-oriented programming concept says, okay, go find button one, okay, and then specify something related to button one. Okay, so now what do? I want to switch to screen two. That's basically what it says, right? So let's see. What do you think I should do if I want to switch to screen two? Yes, go ahead.
Why isn't screen two listed on the left-hand side?
On my left-hand side, because screen two is not a component of screen one. Screen one is the.
When you're on the block, you have to. Okay.
Yep.
I thought everything would just be listed there.
No, they do not share anything. Screen one is not the owner of screen two. They are all screens are components of an app, but the screens do not own each other. Okay? So screen two doesn't show up here. So to switch to screen two, you're not going to use the object-oriented method. Instead, you have to go to the control tab here. So you go to the control tab, okay, and kind of scroll all the way to the bottom. Okay, so at the bottom here, you get a few things that have to do with screens. Okay, open another screen with start value, get start value, close screen with result. These are all related to screen manipulation. So if you want to do something simple and all you want to do is go like, I just want to open another screen, and you don't need to pass any information to it, then you can use the simple one, which is the top one right here that says open another screen. And then you have to use the screen name to identify which screen you want to open. Yep.
With that open another screen with start value, is that how you would pass the JSON to?
You can pass one single value to it. So if there's only one thing you want to pass, like a number, you can just stash the number into start value. But if you have like username, user profile information, settings for the app and blah blah blah, a whole bunch of stuff, then it's good to use JSON to encode a whole bunch of stuff into a single string, and then specify that one single string as start value. Yep.
So you have open screen and you have closed screen.
Mm-hmm.
Am I assuming if you're on screen two and you do closed screen, it goes back one screen to screen one? Like,
Yep.
What's the difference between closing and opening the screen, I guess?
So to close a screen, basically it is literally just closing the screen.
But where does it go?
It goes back to a previous screen if there is one.
Always the previous screen?
So the ordering of opening a screen, establishes what we call a layer or a stack. So basically when the screen is closed, it goes back to whatever was the screen before that.
Okay.
So in App Inventor,
If it was screen 5, it would go back to screen 5.
if screen 5 opened up screen 2 and screen 2 closes, then you go back to screen 5. That is correct. Sorry?
It's like a magic card stack.
It is a stack. Yeah, it's a last in, first out. Okay. So in this case, let's just try the simple one first. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and say, I'm just going to start the other screen. So you now go to text, okay, and you can specify the actual name of screen 2. Now, what name are we talking about? Let's be careful here, because when we switch to screen 2, there are two names, there are two quote-unquote names associated. Okay, one is the title. The title is simply what is displayed, not the name. This is just what is displayed. You can change this one to anything you want. Okay, you can say this is the, I don't know, calculation part. Okay, But you can see that by changing the title, you're changing what is displayed here, but the actual name is still screen 2. Now, do you want to remain as screen 2 instead of saying this is the screen quote unquote calculation, or name it according to what the screen does? That's up to you. Okay? I strongly advise that we change these to reflect what it does. So if this screen is going to, I can't change it. All right, so once you have a screen, that is already done, you cannot rename it. It's not like other components where you can just rename it. This one you cannot. With label 1, I can go to rename and actually change it to something else, but with screen 2, I cannot.
You can never rename it?
Yeah, that seems to be the case.
That's annoying.
Well, okay, I take it back. You have to download the AIA file, decompress it, read through all the XML file, and change all references to screen 2 to whatever name you want to change it to. If you guys want to do it that way, if you want to investigate how to do it in that direction, I can show you guys how to do it. Okay, so assuming that is the case, then we cannot change the name screen 2. It is now fixed. Okay, it's kind of stuck. Okay, fine, not a problem. So we go back to screen 1. Oh, by the way, if you go to blocks in screen 2, there's nothing there because every screen has its own blocks. So the blocks in screen 1 has absolutely nothing to do with the blocks in screen 2. So they do not share anything. They don't share procedures. They don't share event handlers. They do not share global variables. Nothing. Okay? So when you switch to a different screen, it is as if, I'm starting from scratch. There's nothing there, okay? But we'll fix that. We will fix that, but in a moment. So right now, here I have to specify the actual name of the screen. This is screen 2, not calculation. Calculation is the title of the screen, which is what is displayed, but screen 2 is the actual internal name of the second screen. And I cannot change that once it's created, so now I'm kind of stuck with screen 2 as the name. Are we good so far?
So you can't just say screen 2 dash up UPD for update 1.
No.
Version
Yeah.
control is what I'm
So whatever name you use here, when you specify the screen name, has to match whatever screen name is here. So that has to match. If you have a mismatch, then you end up with a runtime error, when you try to switch the screen. Yep. All right, well, let's go ahead and give this a try. So build. I'm just going to use the APK method, download APK method, because the barcode thing doesn't seem, the QR code thing doesn't seem to be working. Well, actually, I just lied. There is one thing that is shared between screens and even between projects. The backpack. No, I'm not kidding.
JSON code, right? You're gonna need to
Publish that.
put that on every
Yep.
screen, right? If you're gonna use it.
Yep, that's the idea. All right, change global back to its own name, replace it. So this way I don't have to keep changing the name, so I can just up arrow and repeat the same command over and over again. All right, success. And let's see, give it a try. All right, so this is the next version of global. Switch to screen 2. Aha. Oh. Okay. There we go. Okay, let me start the whole thing again. Okay. So there are 2 points I want to make here. This is starting from the app from the beginning, from scratch. When I click on switch to screen 2, the button, it does switch to screen 2. When I press the back button on my phone, it closes screen 2 and it transitions back to screen 1. Now that is without any code on my part, okay? So the back button does have that default behavior of closing whatever screen that is currently active and remove it from the stack so that whatever screen is under that becomes visible and active again. Okay, now if I press the back button again, it will close this one, which will basically exit out of the app itself. So that's a default behavior of all screens and with respect to the back button. So are we good so far? If you do not specify what to do with the back button, that's basically what's going to do, what it's going to do. Are we good so far? Question?
No, can you just load it up again and click
Yeah.
switch to screen 2?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yours is a lot faster than mine, surprisingly. It just seemed really delayed. I was wondering if that is like a setting or...
Are you doing it on an actual device? That's why.
Yeah, okay. Because I clicked it 5 times before it went to like screen 2, and I thought something was wrong.
Yeah, it is. It's awfully inefficient, even with accelerated, emulators, to do emulation on a computer, and you're doing it on a laptop. So most laptops are not really designed for that type of processing power. I mean, so you're gonna have some delay, but since I can now say again, it's only $75 to get a reasonably fast. I mean, a calculus textbook is $300, and then you have to pay $130 for accessing the online exercise stuff. I know it's for a few semesters, but still, I mean, like $400, to for textbook and the exercise that comes along with the textbook. And this thing, you can use it after class too. I mean, you can sell it back on eBay for $70. You lose a little bit of shipping, and that's about it. Well, that's why you pre-install certain things on it, right?
Are you teaching this class next semester?
I do not know. I don't think so. Well, I think they might offer this class next semester. Sorry?
Sell it to the students in the next class.
You can do that too, or you can just sell it on eBay. I mean, if you buy it for $75,
You may rob students.
a little bit. Craigslist then.
Somebody else robs you.
Not when you have a phone that has this is not the $75 phone. The other one I forgot to bring that one. This is my actual phone, which is probably worth $75 now. Yeah, the other phone is the actual phone that I bought specifically just for testing, debugging purposes. All right, so are we good so far? Now, what if I want to change the behavior of the program? Okay, what if I want screen 1 to collect 2 numbers, and I want screen 2 to do the calculation, and then switch back to screen 1 to display the result? In other words, I'm making something that's totally over-convoluted for what I'm trying to do. But I want to illustrate it so that we can see how to pass information from one screen to another. And when that screen is done, how do we pass something back to the first screen? Is that okay? Do we understand what I'm trying to say? Okay. So we're trying to pass information from one screen to another, and then we try to specify the behavior of what happens when a screen closes. Okay? All right. So to do that, screen 1, I need to go to the designer and do a few things. The first thing is, I don't think I need label 1, but we'll keep it there for a little bit. But we'll need 2 text boxes. So we'll get one text box here, one text box here to collect 2 numbers that I'm going to add, okay? So because these 2 are for sure going to be numbers, so I can now specify numerical only. So numbers only, there we go. And specify the same thing for the second text box. All right. And we want that also to be numbers only. And we can also put in some hint here. Second number to be added. I'm just illustrating all the kind of fun stuff, properties that you can specify. So this is the first number to be added. First number to be added. And of course, this button is going to change and we'll say start adding. Okay. All right. Okay, so that's what my new screen one looks like. It has got two text boxes for me to specify two numbers. And when I click the button, I want the second screen to do the actual addition. Okay? So that means I need to pass that information along, to do it, right? Okay. So the first thing instinctively is we go to the blocks of screen one. And obviously we get text box 1, we get text box 2, and from these we can get to the text of the text boxes. So we can scroll down to here. You can see how we can access text box 2.text. So from screen 1, it's pretty easy, okay, to get to the values that we want to add, okay? But the question is, well, but we want to do the adding in screen 2. How do we do that? Let's switch to screen 2 and see if we can see the text boxes. We switch to screen 2, and there's nothing here, okay? There's only the label, and there's no text box 1, there's no text box 2. So how are we going to see the values to be added in screen 2? We can't, okay? Okay, next thing, we'll try something else.
Is there a reason for this, by the way?
Yes. So in an actual app written in Java using Android Studio, it is the same way. So the Java code, okay, so you're asking for a philosophical question, not implementation. Okay.
Why wouldn't they easily make a global variable that can go across screens?
Because the screens are actually entities of their own, and you can start up an app with a different screen. Now, in App Inventor, we cannot do that, okay? But once you, okay, I take it back. We can, but you have to use, okay, I'm forgetting the name of that thing. Okay, so if you scroll down this list here and you go to connectivity, and you scroll down activity starter. So with activity starter, if you know specific names of an app, in Activity Starter, you can start an app and jump to a particular screen of that app. So that means, an application doesn't have to start with the first screen or the second screen. You can jump to a particular screen if you know the name of that particular screen. So that means, when you talk about an app, it's nothing more than a collection of screens. And the screens are basically the smallest self-contained units where variables are visible to the whole thing, the methods, classes, and so on are shared. But between screens, they are not shared. Now, for those of you who plan to do more serious type of Android programming, the term screen that we use here in App Inventor is called an activity. But they are the same thing. Screen, activity are basically two words to describe exactly the same thing. And basically, global variables do not go across activities or screens.
Did they make it that way to save space, or to?
They make it that way so that there's no reliance on between screens. And also to save space as well, because even if you have an app, one screen may require like lots of data loaded. Another screen may require like only this much loaded. So if you do not need to have everything loaded, then you can potentially save space, which is a big thing because if you think about the cell phone, how much RAM do you have on a typical $200 to $300 cell phone? Has anyone looked at 64 what? No, a little more than that. Huh?
I thought it was
16
16.
what? What unit are we talking about? 4 gigabytes. Yes, 4 gigabytes. 2 to 4 gigabytes would be for the $100 to $300 phones. Even if you pay a lot of money and get a Galaxy S9, okay, you only get about 8 gigabytes of RAM. 6 to 8 gigabytes would be the range for a super expensive phone. That's not a lot of RAM. Okay, you load up a few applications and then they have to start to kick each other out. Okay, so that is the reason why, with a desktop, okay, you can see how many things I have going on, just on the screen here. I got like terminals, emulators, the screen from an Android device and stuff like that, and that's not even close to what I usually do with my desktop computer. But on a mobile device, okay, even on a tablet, where you have the screen space to do it, you can't do multitasking the same way, because when you load up one app and you load up another app, the third one doesn't have enough RAM to run. It has to kick something out. So when it kicks things out, it's kicking out screens. It's not kicking out apps, it's kicking out screens. So by making things only local to a screen, we only need to keep as little as possible to try to maximize the number of apps that can quote unquote be active at the same time. So it's constantly juggling. I mean, you guys saw that I was running Pokemon Go a little bit earlier. If I just go to read my text, Pokemon Go is out because it takes so much RAM. The system itself takes 1 gig of RAM, okay? And all the various things running in the background that cannot be kicked out is going to take up another gig of RAM. It doesn't leave a whole lot of RAM left for the apps that I actually want to run. So I cannot run Pokemon Go in the background, switch to the foreground, send a few texts, answer email, and then go back to Pokemon Go to resume that app. That app is gone. Yeah. But if you program your app correctly, before it goes away, it has, okay, this is about real Android programming. App Inventor may not be able to do it, but in actual Android programming using Android Studio, before your app gets kicked out, it'll be notified. So you have a chance to save the state of your app and the screen that you're on at that time. So the next time when the user reactivates that app, you as an app knows what screen you were on, what you were doing, what data was displayed. So to the end user, it is as if the app never left. But in reality, the app was kicked out, deallocated, and it was restarted. It is only that your app understanding, oh, when I got kicked out, I was here on this screen, I was doing this, and it can resume everything as if it never left.
Is that like one of the major differences between the iPhone and Android?
I believe iPhones would have the same kind of limitation. So
I thought iPhone was more limited. Like it really does.
Oh, it does?
One app ever at a time, whereas Android at least has the capability to have 2 or 3 maybe.
yeah,
You can even split screen, I think, on Android, right?
it depends on the with Samsung, yes, and I think with this, it depends on the yes.
You can with the Android operating system, doable. iPhone is impossible.
With I do not have an iPhone.
That, like, they always probably pretend that there's stuff running in the background, but it's not really in that sense. There's maybe some processes, but the app is being closed and saved in its state.
Okay.
It's impossible to do. I mean, and it's a known thing with iPhone that Android has that ability to run multiple things, but not Android. iPhone does not.
See this little tab here next to the X? If I click on that, it allows me to do the split screen thing. So that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm running screen one on one, and I can run, let's see if that works. Pokemon Go on the other one. Well, because
Side by side of our 2 apps.
yeah, so I can teach and spin my balls at the same time. Right? And now I have recording to prove you guys can take it to the dean and go like, tag this.
Recording this.
Yeah, I'm recording all of this.
That's funny.
But it is so relevant to this class.
Good thing they doesn't pick up our questions. It just looks like you're playing games.
Yep, so let's see. Can I interact? Yep, indeed I can. Yeah, but it doesn't show you the entire... So it basically it is as if my actual screen is only this big with my other app. But yes, so this is proving that you are correct. With Android, you can split the screen and run 2 things at the same time, which is very handy sometimes. But it depends on how heavy duty both of these things are.
You can't see what you're running and actually things. There's been many times where you want to run, like on an iPhone, you're like, all right, got to get to the other crap, and instead of having to, you're relaunching it from the beginning, or it logs you out, or whatever
Oh.
it is,
Mm-hmm.
it is. Oh, you can even adjust the size.
Yeah, you can even adjust the size
Now, how did
impossible.
you get both of them to show up like that again?
by clicking this button.
Oh.
Now, can I split again? Nope. Okay, so 2 is the
What if
maximum.
you go landscape?
Well,
You can have 3.
so you do it side by side instead of top down. But it's still a pretty handy feature, and this has nothing to do with Android programming per se. It is just supported by Android.
Things like you can watch a movie and do something at the same time.
Yes.
Like you can't do that on iPhone. Like, every time
Well.
like even sending a text message, it's annoying. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm watching something and my wife texts me, I'm like, oh, God damn it, I gotta go and exit what
And
I'm
then-
watching just to be like, okay, honey, and then go back to it.
That's the right answer. Good job.
But yeah, it's like, but you can at least do that with that, right?
Yep.
You can just
You can certainly do that.
listen to it in the background,
Well, music is a different thing.
It's different, but
Yeah.
movies you can't. You can't let Netflix run and listen to it just to send a message real quick.
Right.
I actually use my watch for that all the time.
Oh, so you can use a watch to do the
Also,
texting.
Yeah. I can
Okay.
do that, and then I'll keep whatever.
So that's how they sell more Apple Watches, right? Yeah, because you need it.
Yeah, exactly. Need to send a damn message.
As opposed to with Android, I just go buy a $50 phone, for answering my text.
Now your phones are really saying that Android, the new ones, the good ones are over 1,000.
Yep, but they still have $125 phones you can buy from Amazon that are unlocked.
You can buy a $200 iPhone that's old from Amazon.
Yeah, but the $150 phone is not old. It's actually in current production. It's just that Amazon has Amazon advertisement built into it. So when you
yeah.
yeah
They do that
yeah
with phones now?
yeah
I know the Kindles do that.
yeah they do it with phones, but only from certain manufacturers.
I don't know how much revenue they make off that stupid ad that I have to unlock every time on my Kindle.
I have no idea. All right. So now our question is now saying, so how do we get data from screen 1 to screen 2, right? Okay, so let's switch back to screen 1 and look at its blocks. So we switch back to screen 1, and then we look at the blocks. And what we need to do is to take this out, okay? But I'm not removing it just yet. And then what we'll do is we'll use the other block that says about the same thing, but not exactly the same thing. See, one block says, open another screen, and then the other one says open another screen, but with start value. So that start value is the big difference. So now what I can do is I can specify the same screen name. Okay, so there we go. And now I really have no use of this block here. Toss it. But now I can specify what we call a start value. But the start value, as the name implies, is singular. Okay, it can only be one thing. It can be a number, can be a string, cannot be a list. Okay, it cannot be a list.
Wait.
So, yes, go ahead.
If it can't be a list, how can you use the JSON?
Well, JSON is
I
text.
guess it's taking the list and turning it into.
Yep.
I'm still thinking of it as a.
Okay, so this is where the backpack comes in handy. Okay, so I have to go back to my projects. Yeah, I have to. Okay, I'll do it now. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna upload this so that you guys can have it too. So save project, no import, no export. There we go. All right, so this is JSON, and then I switch to the class, which is here. And then I will send it to you guys using announcement. So it's going to get to you as an email. Okay, if you check your apps.lostreels.edu account, it will come to you as an email. Okay. And open. Save. There we go. So if you don't get it as an email, you can just log into the class, go to announcement, and get it from the announcement area. Is that okay? Does everybody know how to get to the announcement stuff? You'll get an email, but if you don't get the email or you decide, okay, I don't want to wait for my email, you just click on announcements in Canvas, and it will list all the announcements, including the data of SIG, in reverse chronological order. So this is the last one, and when you click on it, it will have an attachment because I uploaded the file to be associated with that announcement. So you just click on that attachment, download it, and then re-upload it when you sign in to App Inventor. So now you have that project as a part of your projects. Okay? All right, so, but the point here is I have to go to blocks because I want to make this thing a part of my backpack. Now, this is another trick, when you look into something and go like, this is done, okay? I really don't need to look at all this messy detail all the time, okay? Because it does make dragging and dropping kind of a hassle. So you can go here and you can say collapse block. So now that entire block, okay, becomes something like this. It still tells you what it is, right? It tells you to make JSON, but it doesn't show you all the details where it is not needed, because my objective here is really just to put it into the backpack so I can use it in another project, right? So you can now stash it into your backpack. Okay, put it into your backpack. And this is the content of my backpack. Very good. Uh-oh. I think I just did something stupid. I put it back into here. Okay, toss it into the trash can. There we go. Do I have only one copy now? Oh, I have to trash that too. So every time I click on the backpack, it pastes it into the current project. So I don't want to click it here. Okay, let me just kind of drag it one more time into here. Now I switch project. So I'll go back to my projects, switch back to what we were working on today with global. Click on the backpack, and then place this into our current project. There we go. So now we have that make JSON subroutine or procedure available now to whatever we're doing now. Is that okay? Cool?
So you can't just copy here, Control C, and then
Nope.
Okay.
No, that does not work.
Okay.
Yep.
Not like Word.
That would be easy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now that we have make JSON, we'll use make JSON here, and what we're gonna make, we'll keep it simple today. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll keep it simple, which basically means we are not using key value pairs. Okay. We're just gonna make a list of 2 items, where the first item is the text of text box 1, and the second item is the text of text box 2. So that's relatively easy to do, because once you have this block, you can change from which object. Okay. So now I'm first making a list, of 2 numbers. So this is a list of 2 numbers. Then I use make JSON to turn that list into the JSON representation of a list of 2 numbers. And then that is being sent as the start value to screen 2 when I start screen 2. Is that okay? So now I need to go to screen 2 because, this is the sender, right? This is the one throwing the ball. So I need to go to screen 2 and say, okay, am I catching it? Screen 2 currently is empty. There's nothing here, okay? So I need to specify some code at least to go like, yep, I got it. So the easiest way to do it right now is to go to screen 2, okay? So when you click on screen 2, just like any other screen, it has got a few events it can handle. It can handle initialize, which is basically when the screen first starts, okay? It can also respond to some of the other things, which we are not going to talk about yet. But let's scroll down the list here. It also has permission granted, permission denied, screen orientation changed. Okay, so all of these of all of these, this is what we want. When you first start the screen, the initialize event is generated. So this is where we're going to catch that ball, okay? So the way we're going to catch that ball is to go back to control again and scroll all the way to the bottom. And you can see how get start value is a block. That is how we get the start value when the screen is started from another screen, okay? But there's a notch here. There's not a notch here. There's a little tab, but not a notch here. So that means it is not something you can just kind of plug in here. It is only providing a value. You have to decide what to do with that value. So at this point, the quickest way to utilize that value is to use my label 1. So I'm going to go to label 1, and we'll change the text of label 1 to the start value, because I just want a quick confirmation that I caught the JSON representation of the list, okay? Because I don't want to do any extraction and say, okay, we'll add this and blah, 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 until I know I got it, okay? So I have to make sure that I'm getting it first, then we'll do something about it. Is that making any sense? Yes? Okay. So let's go ahead and make the APK file for testing purposes. About that split screen thing, as a system administrator, I find it very useful because there's a program that is an SSH client, so I can remote into a server using that program. But a lot of times, I also have to look up something on the web at the same time, about server administration, like the details of a command and whatnot. So I can use a split screen. So the browser is on top, and then the command line interface is below. And I have a tiny little keyboard that looks just like my laptop keyboard, and I can just do all kinds of server administration on my phone. It's kind of cool. All right, so we'll reinstall the app. And go back here. And restart the app. There we go. So this time we have two numbers that we can specify. So let's say 25 for the first one and 56 for the second one, okay? And then we click Start Adding. And now we switch to the second screen, and you can see how the label text is switched to the JSON representation of a list of the two numbers. Now I can do something about it. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm not only illustrating, how to use a list, how to switch between the screens, but I'm kind of also illustrating how to debug your program, step by step. So do not make assumptions that, yep, I got the list, okay? Well, make sure you get the list first, because otherwise your program doesn't work and you have no idea which step wasn't working. All right, so now that we know we got the list, we can do something about it. So what we're going to do is we do some calculation, and the calculation by itself is not going to return the value to the first one. In other words, it's not going to display the sum of those two things, okay? So what we'll do is we are going to go to screen 2 and say, when screen 2 back button is pressed, this is what we're going to do. So we'll use back pressed as an event handler. Ooh, so that means the default behavior of when the back button is pressed, we just kind of go back to the previous screen without anything, without doing a single thing. You can override that behavior. So the first thing we're going to do is absolutely nothing. We'll just say, yep, I'm going to handle the back button when it's pressed, but I'm not going to do a single thing when it's pressed. What do you think is going to happen to the app? It's going to be stuck in screen 2. There's no way to go back to screen 1 now, because the default behavior of closing the screen is no longer being done, because I have just overridden the original default behavior of, yeah, let's close this screen and go back to the previous one. Now I'm saying I am going to intercept the event but I'm not going to do a single thing about it. Okay, so this is important because nope, there's no warning here. Hmm?
That means you stay stuck?
That means you stay stuck. You can close the app, okay, the entire app, but you cannot switch back to screen one. But it's important. This is good because it gives you a chance of asking the end user, you have data that you have not saved. Do you want to save that data before closing the screen? So it is important that you can do this. You just have to program your code, carefully so that you do not end up with a stuck situation. But it gives you that chance of asking the end user to save some data if that is applicable. Okay, so let's go back. And, I need to re-upload the app first. There we go. Which will automatically close the app on the other side. And then we'll start it again. Okay. And then we'll specify the numbers. Okay. Click, start adding. We get to the screen 2. So now I'm pressing the back button. Nothing happens. Which is good, okay? Because it means you can control the behavior of the back button, which comes in very handy sometimes. All right, so what we're going to do here is we'll send back the result of the sum, okay? I'm not displaying the sum on the second screen. I'm sending back the value of the sum. So I'm doing it totally in a very convoluted way, but to illustrate the mechanisms that you can do in screens. Okay, so you go to control, go all the way to the end because that's where all the screen related stuff is. And this time we're going to close screen with a value as a result. Okay, so that result is a mathematical sum. So we go to math, we pick up the addition, and then we also need to get to individual items of a list. So in here, now this is something that is kind of dangerous, but I'm going to do it here. So I'm going to make the assumption that the list has exactly 2 items and they're both numbers. Okay, so I'm going to make that assumption. So what list are we talking about? The decoded version of JSON. How do we decode JSON? What do we need to decode JSON? We'll need a Web3 component. A web component. That is needed as a component because it is a procedure in a web component that can do JSON decoding. So I might be better off with a local variable block. Okay, let me do that. So initialize local variables like that. And the name is going to be list to web1 JSON decode or JSON text decode of the start value. There we go. All right, so let me explain this part a little bit first. So I'm using a local variable block so that I don't have to keep doing this like twice. So what I'm doing here is I'm using the web1 component, which has a method or subroutine built into it that can do JSON text decode. That is the reverse of make JSON. So make JSON goes from a list into a string. JSON text decode goes the opposite way. It goes from a string back to a number, a string, or a list. In this case, a list. Get start value is the same thing. So get start value is accessible to the screen the whole time. Okay, so that's why you can use it any way you want. And then we'll move this block into the local variable block here. So we'll take the second block, stash it inside here, and then we'll use this list, our local variable, and huh? You just hover over the local variable without clicking anything. This is without clicking anything. Nope, you just hover. Yep, you just hover and that's all it's automatic. So it, yeah, pretty handy. And then we have to specify the index. The index is basically specifying which item in the list. And remember, even though in C and C++, Java, and most other languages, we start with 0, in App Inventor, we start with 1. Okay? And then the second item is just index 2. So this is how we get back the two numbers individually, because one is the first item of the list, the other one is the second item of the list. But you have to make that list first by calling JSON text decode, because otherwise the start value is just a string. It just looks like a list to you and me, but it's not a list from the perspective of App Inventor. Is that okay? So now we're closing the screen with this value. So we're throwing the ball again, right? The question now is, how do we catch this ball in the first screen? So we switch back to screen 1. And, well, there's nothing here that says anything. So most people with a conventional programming mindset is going to say, oh, we'll just specify another block below this one, because it looks like this one opens the other screen. So when the other screen is done, we will resume execution in the click method. That is not the case. Okay? So open another screen with start value is what we call a non-blocking block. Okay, I hate to say that word. It's a non-blocking block because what it means is it doesn't stop. It doesn't pause. It just opens another screen with a start value, and then it says, I'm done. Okay, so when screen 2 is really done with a result and say, I'm done, I'm passing this result back to whatever started me in the first place, how do we catch that ball? That generates another event. Yes?
Does closing screen 2 reinitialize screen 1?
No, it does not. So screen 1 is still sitting around. When screen 2 is active, it is just out of view. Okay? So now, when we get back here, you have to go to screen 1. There's an activity, or not activity, but an event that has a very special name. Okay? It is called other screen closed. So in other words, if some other screen closed and you become the active screen again, this event is triggered. Is that okay? Now that is very, very important. So in here, there are two what we call parameters. The first one basically spells out the name of the screen that just got closed, in our case, screen 2. The second one is the result, which in this case is the sum that we have been looking for. Okay, so I'm going to do this real quick, just so that the next class can come in. So I'm just going to do this really fast. And during the lab time, of today, I can upload this app here so that you guys can take a look at it. But right now, I just need to do this really fast by setting the text of the label to just the result. So I'm not even going to bother to check, what screen has closed, okay? Which is typically the first thing you want to do is to say, okay, I'm getting this event because a screen has closed, but which one has closed? Because screen 1 can start screen 2, screen 3, and many other screens, but which one closed and got back to you this time? You should check. But in this app, we're not going to do that just yet, okay? So we'll build the app. Yep.
Can you upload this one?
Yes. But we'll test it first, and then we'll end today's lecture, and then I'll upload it during the lab time.
Okay.
Yep. You get it.
No, I get it. I'm more thinking like 2 weeks from now, I look at it, am I still going to get it?
Well, the lecture itself is getting recorded too, so you. So
yeah, but sometimes people just have the file with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, you want to do something with it, so that way you can actually, associate it with some action things that you do. You remember things better that way. Okay, so here's the quick one. Go to global Okay, so here's the thing. Okay, I'm about to press the back button. So 25 plus 56 is 81. Go back, you can see how the label of screen 1 is updated to 81. So I have to end today's lecture because the next class is waiting.
Can we put a sign out there so they know that class is still in session? That way they don't open the doors.
Well, I will tell them not to open the door until 10:20, but because technically, speaking, 10:20 is the time that I should get out of here. Yeah.
True.
All right, so I'm gonna end the recorder first, and then I'll see you guys on Wednesday.